Oh, there we go. Another big, hopefully I have the camera at the right angle. Another big metal chunk just popped out. Here's the diff oil. You can see all the metal particles floating around, which is not that uncommon for a welded diff. But obviously, things like this, that, this, and crucially, that, and that shouldn't be free falling in the diff. All right, today is the day. Hopefully you can hear me. It's very windy outside. I actually bought a nice microphone for the GoPro. Hopefully it works quite well. But yes, the E46 is out of the backyard and it looks like it's still leaking. But I pushed the E46 out today. It is filthy. It looks terrible. But so we fixed the welded diff. We resealed the diff cover and filled it full of fresh fluid. And I gave the diff cover plenty of time to cure overnight, so hopefully there's no more leaks. And today we're going to reinstall the welded diff back into the E46 and hopefully drive it around, because it has been sitting for a long, long time. If you couldn't tell by how filthy it is, there's like cobwebs all over it. I feel bad for this car, but we're gonna get it all fixed up today. So let me grab the diff, get the car jacked up, and we'll get to it. This never gets any lighter. Okay. There's the welded diff. Let's jack the car up and get started. Alright, so I have the E46 on stands. I'm running into a little problem where the car is so dirty that being up in the air, the heavy winds are actually blowing filth off the car into my eyes. So we're gonna let the car sit for a second and kind of blow dry itself out, and then we're gonna work on it. The only problem I'm running into right now is this car has been sitting for so long, I kind of forget how to do all this. I think I'm gonna do up the axles first and kind of just figure it out from there. Okay, so through a mix of brute strength and just utilizing getting the jack just right. Sorry, I can't even speak, it's so cold out here. I got the diff roughly into place. Again, like I said, I'm having trouble remembering how the order of how you put this thing back in, so I think I'm going to try and do the rear diff bolt first and then take it from there, because that'll kind of hold it in place a little bit. So, I have the diff bolt up there, and now it's going to line up the diff, the back of the diff, to this rear diff bushing. And it looks like I need to go forward. Okay, so I got the rear diff bolt started. It's a 21mm socket. I thought it was an 18. It's definitely not. Okay, so I have the rear diff bolt in. I left it loose just because I need to move the diff around and get the two front bolts to line up. So this is in, so hopefully the diff stays in place a little bit better. So let's move on to the front two bolts. These are the hardest ones to get. Oh my god. Alright, I know before I said I was going to do the front diff bolts, but it's going to make things a little bit easier for me, I think, if I do the drive shaft bolts first. So let's get this guy lined up. My particular E46 uses a 4-bolt drive shaft. I think some of them you also use a 6-bolt. Either way, they use, I think it's an E14 Torx. No, E12. E12 Torx, which is like an inverted Torx, I guess is what you want to call it. And since I've taken this drive line apart about 1,000 times, these bolts are actually all nice and have nice clean threads, so I take them apart and clean them. Alright, so they actually go on quite nicely. Alright, now that the drive shaft's no longer hanging, I can pull out this diff brace and access the front diff bolts. Alright. So, here are the front diff bushings. If you followed along, you know I did poly on all this. Lining all of this up is a huge pain in the dick. Because the diff has free play up, down, and left to right. So you can't, because of how high these are up in the car, I can't actually see through these holes. So you have to kind of use the force and pray that everything lines up right. So let's get to it. To make these front diff bushings even more of a pain in the dick than lining them up, is I forgot with the poly they come with these washers. One goes at the front and one goes at the back. But the problem with the one at the back is obviously to slide this little washer between the diff housing and the bushing itself, which is a very tight fit. So this is probably the hardest part. Oh yeah, and the washers are different. You want the flat washer with no indentations to go between the diff and the bushing. The one you care about has this little crosshairs on it. Those have to go in the front. This part sucks. So you can see I lowered the diff, and that gave me enough room up here to slip the little disc in right here between the diff and the bushing. So I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. Now last time I got so frustrated at this step, I ended up putting adhesive on these washers, so they're still a little bit sticky. Hopefully this still helps. Because the problem is, if you manage to slip them in place, like I can't seem to do right now, they want to slide around and never quite line up where you need them to go. Ow! Sorry, I need to move the GoPro, it's in the way of my hand. Needless to say, this is a huge pain in the dick. Oh, there we go, okay. Alright, got it started. It's like... So you can see, is that there's a lot of play in here. So getting this washer lined up with the bolt hole in the bushing and the bolt hole in the diff is such a pain. This is probably the hardest part of the whole job. I think I have it kind of close though. Okay, it's been like 45 minutes of me f***ing around with these front diff bushings, but I think I got this one started. Otherwise, well, it's either started or it's cross-threaded. But either way it started. I started it by hand, and I did what I've done the last couple of times, and I stuck the biggest screwdriver I could find in this one, so that one's like somewhat lined up, and that allowed me to kind of get this one with enough manhandling lined up. Okay, so that's loosely in. Now I need to try and get this side in. Hopefully it goes in better than this side did. Jesus. Okay, so after I got this side of the diff bolt in, it took about 5 minutes of kind of fiddling around to get this one to go through. And now I'm going to tighten down the 3 diff bolts and then put the axles in and keep going. There we go. Alright, front 2 diff bolts torqued on a 70 pound-foot. Let's go to the rear, which is 128 pound-foot of torque. So on an E46, the rear diff bolt is an animal. It's a 21 millimeter head. It's like almost 5 inches long, and obviously it goes through the diff and through this massive bushing. So the torque spec is 128 pound-foot, which is a lot of fun when you don't have that much room to actually move a big torque wrench around. So let's try and give it a shot anyway. All right, 21 mil wrench, torque wrench, which we're gonna set to 128 pound-foot of torque. Right. Got all the diff bolts torqued down. I had to jack the car up higher because the clearance was so tight. I actually couldn't even get my torque wrench under this side of the car, but I got it done. While I was down there, I also torqued down the drive shaft bolts, which are also E12 E-Torx bolts. And so now I'm going to bolt up the axles to the diff, which also use lovely E12 bolts. I hate these things. I'm always afraid I'm going to strip them. Hasn't happened yet, but God, it's so scary. Oh no! Told you guys it's windy. Oh my God. Alright. There, hopefully that will keep you up. in that time that I cut the camera, I got all the axle bolts on this side done as well. It's the same as this side, so nothing really to see there. Now I'm reinstalling this little diff brace piece. It kind of goes between the diff, the drive shaft end, and obviously this also doubles as your front subframe connecting points. And there are 4 little bolts that go right here that are kind of a pain in the butt, because once you do the subframe reinforcements, there's a little spacer that's to sit right here, and those get lost and fall all the time. Alright, sorry for the delay. I put the GoPro down in the car and kind of forgot about it. But in the meantime, I wrapped things up, double-checked everything with a torque wrench, and put the underbody heat shield and bolted the exhaust back on. So now we should be all set. All I need to do now is fire up the car, make sure there's no exhaust leaks, then take off the jack stands, and then we're good to go. Alright. Hop in here. Key in ignition. Sounds like maybe a small exhaust leak. Let me listen for it. Okay, so we're gonna skip some steps and I'm gonna do an oil change now. I'm just gonna do a quick oil change. I'm gonna keep the same filter since I changed it last time and it only has like, I guess like 1,000 miles on it. So, but the oil is quite old. I think it's like 1 drift day plus like 6 or 7 months old just sitting. So I'm gonna change it because I'm sure it's gone flat because it's just shitty, cheap W30, like conventional. So do a quick drain and fill and then go drive around. That's 1 drift day, like 1,000 miles a day. I'm just changing out of option parts and go on that. Probably wasn't right here, but Alright, we have all the old oil drained out of the E46. Now it's time to fill it back up with about 6 quarts of the new stuff. And this is why you look for deals on Craigslist from oil shops that have all this sealed stuff for really, really cheap. Let's see if that'll sit there. Alright, 10-minute oil change. Well, I was gonna wash the car today too, but as you can see, it's raining in Southern California for once. And you know what rain means? It means tonight we can go break in that welded diff, some street drifts. Oh my god, that was a massive scramble to get the car down. It started hailing really bad. That was wild. Actually hurt. But car's down. Let me torque the lugs. I already checked the oil level, and I think we're good to go. Okay, so it's kind of a thrash to get everything done on the car. As you saw, I got the car started again after 3 months, pulled the differential out, determined it was junk, bought a new diff, had that ordered up by a real shop with a real welder, not the Harbor Freight welder, put it in the car, and as you saw, the video kind of cut right there as soon as I got the car done. But the good news is, after doing all that work, the car runs and drives great. As you can see, I'm sitting in it right now, and it's idling very loudly. So yes, I guess the moral of the story is don't use a Harbor Freight welder to weld your differential unless you really know what you're doing and you're very good at it. That's it for this episode of Project E46. Stay tuned for the next one where hopefully the video is a lot shorter and I have a lot more fun doing what I'm doing in the video. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.